up in the front. Okay. Good evening, everyone. A couple of housekeeping things. First, did everyone get the source sheet as you were coming in? If not, I'll bring a few. So just raise by show of hands how many people need source sheets? All right, a few. So we'll bring a stack in and we'll make sure that they get distributed. The second thing is, if you are here as a guest, there are bathrooms over that way and there are bathrooms over that way. But you shouldn't need it because we're in for a really wonderful evening. My name is Rabbi Ari Kamen. I'm the Rabbi of Sheretz Israel. And I want to acknowledge and express gratitude to Or Chadash and to Ahavat Achim and to the Atlanta Rabbinic Association for and to help make this evening happen. The Hartman Institute has been producing, I think, some of the most important work on the relationship between Israeli Jewry and American Jewry, and I've been long following their work and deepening my connection with them. And so when they reached out to see if in this moment that the world has tilted and shifted and turned upside down, it would be possible to help to bring someone from the Hartman Institute here, it was no hesitation. And I'm so glad that Dr. Masua Sagiv stepped to the plate to come to this city, to Atlanta. Dr. Masua Sagiv is a scholar in residence of the Shalom Hartman Institute based in the San Francisco Bay Area and the Koret Visiting Assistant Professor of Jewish and Israel Studies at UC Berkeley. Masua's scholarly work focuses on the development of contemporary Judaism in Israel as a culture, religion, nationality, and as part of Israel's identity as a Jewish and democratic state. Her research explores the role of law, state actors, and civil society organizations in promoting social change across diverse issues: shared society, religion and gender, religion and state, and Jewish peoplehood. She has lots of prizes and accolades, and she had earned her doctorate in law from Tel Aviv University, where she wrote her dissertation on the topic of law and social change in the halachic feminist struggle in Israel. That won the Ben Halpern Award for Best Dissertation in Israel Studies. Please help me and welcome Dr. Masua Sagiv.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I returned from Israel this morning. This is my third year here in the US, in Berkeley, but I'm originally, it's weird to say originally, I'm an Israeli. Even though I have good English, you'll hear soon my accent. Do you know how the date is being counted in Israel by many people? Right, so today is October 93rd. I think that one of the things that is so difficult about this moment is that we don't have the time to process October 7th because the trauma is ongoing, the war is ongoing, our hostages, our people are still in Gaza. In the past 2 Shabbats, I was in my shul, my home shul, and during the service, there's a custom to read the names of all of the hostages that are abducted, and I didn't know that. But when I got there, they showed me every congregate, basically, or 20 congregates get pieces of paper with a few names on it, and then you just have their names being read from every place across the congregation, and it's completely heartbreaking. first Shabbat after October 7th. I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but I found myself with around 30 people in my house. We were returning from Shul. We invited one family, then I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but on the way, people just joined. And my oldest daughter went to bring a kid from the playground and returned with 2 more families, and then 1 more family came, and everyone came with food. And every room in the house was occupied with adults and children. From time to time, someone would go to the kitchen and, wash some fruits and bring them to the table outside where most of the adults sat down. And at some point, I was looking at a friend and I was saying, this feels awfully a lot like a shiva, but in a good way, because that's probably the only place in the world right now where we can laugh, because we know that when we are laughing, we're also crying. A month later, I went with my 14-year-old daughter to DC, to the rally, standing together with another 300,000 people, some of them right here in this room. And we were standing and hearing the speeches, and at some point, a person that stood next to us when Natan Sharansky was speaking, he was turning to us and he said, decades ago, I stood at this exact same place in the rally for solidarity with Soviet Union Jewry. In thinking about all of these moments or experiences when I'm walking around every day ever since October 7th, I'm consumed by thoughts about time. And through this lens of time, I wanna conduct this next few minutes. I want to talk about our present. What does it mean to be present in this moment? I want to talk about our future, both in North America and in Israel. And I want to talk about our past and what we could learn from it. So I'll start with the present. What does it mean to be present in this moment? I want to start with the first source that is in your source sheet, in page number 1. Ever since October 7th, I feel like I'm a one-person archive, because there is so much creativity going on right now, but it feels like it's not being systematically collected. I know that testimonies, there are a few institutions that are collecting testimonials, but there is unbelievable art that is being produced and is not collected because it's too dispersed. So what I'm collecting and then translating. This is one of them. And usually it's like everyday people. It's not famous poets or something like that. So this is by Atara Gavrieli. It was written during October of 2023. Where are you? Why are you on the phone all day? I'm not on the phone. I'm in Be'eri and in Nir Oz, in Shiva and at funerals, and with a brother on the border of Gaza and the one in the Golan. I'm sorry for being absent at times, for testimonies, for brands plucked from the fire, for sections of the iron sword's screen coming down again, dividing the rooms of my heart. My sleep was stolen with 200 more, and I wander a distance of 2,000 years of exile in exactly 2 weeks. I want to acknowledge the sheer helplessness of being unable to be at a place that we want to be right now. In the first few days, my kids would always ask me, why are you on your phone all day? My kids will always ask me, why are you not smiling? And I was on the phone because, and we were all on our phone because it was the only way that we could feel connected, that we could feel like we are there in some way. But it's also, it's almost, what's the word? It's almost makes you freeze to be, we're calling it now doom scrolling, right? Scrolling and as much as long as you keep on scrolling, the feeling of doom just keeps on increasing. And this moment, the fact that you are stuck with your phone, but you want to do something, is something that you feel, especially here, of course, but also in Israel. I have two friends that recalled a meetup between two of them. One of them was drafted to the reserve really, really early on, and the other was, collecting, volunteering, and all of these things. There's a joke in Israel right now, not right now, in the first few weeks, is that everyone are working in a situation room. Like everyone are organizing something. And so, one friend who's on reserve, the one who's volunteering meets the reservist friend, and he says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so envious. You're doing something, and I feel like I'm going crazy because I can't do anything here. What am I doing?" And the reservist is saying, "What, are you nuts? Like I'm sitting around all day waiting, and you're doing. I'm so envious of how you're doing." But this feeling of I want to do something is so incredibly strong. In the last day of October, Levi Lifshitz passed away, fell in battle. A soldier, 21-year-old, fell in battle in Gaza. He left a file on his computer for his family and friends, in case he dies. And part of what was written in this text was published by his family. And it's here in source number 2. This is what Levi Lifshitz, Zichro Livracha, wrote. "I ask not to sink into grief. It may be daily and exhausting, but the action that can grow from it is not exhausting, but constructive. Nothing has been more difficult for me than not doing, so I ask everyone around me, always do." Always do, the translation, it's a translation of ta'asu tamid, always do. And during the Shiva, Levi's friends put up 2 big signs outside of his parents' house, of his house basically, ta'asu tamid, always do. So this tension between the feeling of helplessness and the need to do something is very, very strong. But I want to say also that our people has been showing up in a way that I think I'm looking forward, that it was beyond every expectation that we had, both in our relationship between North American Jews and Israeli Jews, and among Israelis themselves, and I'll talk about that in a second. I have friends who went to funerals and to shivas. One of my friends was even on a team of writing eulogies because it was needed at some point, unfortunately, because of the scale of the mass murders. I have a friend who still does laundry every single day for people who are displaced from their homes, whether in the south or in the north. And people in this community, in our communities, have also been present and showing up in an amazing way in, collecting equipment and sending it over, in writing to our representatives, in coming to rallies, in supporting our communities and growing them and increasing them. Just want us to be for a second in this moment where the tension is almost too much to bear, but we have been showing up in an amazing way. Now, what is next? What does the future hold for us as a people and as two separate communities? I think it's important to realize that October 7th have changed us, and we will not return to what we were before. As a people, we thought that we have defied history, the history of Jewish vulnerability, the history of Jewish victimhood. Rabbi Soloveitchik has defined the Jewish story as a story of perpetual victims, again, I'm losing words, perpetual vulnerability. We've thought that it would be different this time. We have thought that America is exceptional. We have thought that the sovereign state of Israel is exceptional, and that our history has started over. October 7th have showed us that history returns again and again and again. We know classic anti-Semitism. We know what it means for the Jew to be the outsider of society, not blonde enough, with eyes that are not blue enough, like living the outskirts of society. Now we are dealing with a new wish. It's not really new, but it's the mainstreaming of it, of this anti-Semitism is new, where the Jew or the Jewish people or the manifestation of the Jewish people, which is Israel, is perceived as the bearer of the symbol of the worst crime that the West can ever commit. That's colonialism, that's racism. The Jews are perpetuated as the symbol of whiteness, as the symbol of the West, and therefore the sins of the West must be redeemed through the Jews. We are betrayed by our allies. We are deeply betrayed by the people that we have considered as partners in the same movement. I can definitely speak as someone who lives in academic circles, that I feel strongly betrayed by intellectuals in my circles, specifically as someone who works in feminism and law. I am feeling incredibly betrayed by intellectual feminism these days, and the unbelievable, really unbelievable, though it's believable, reaction to the sexual crimes that were committed by Hamas. We are feeling betrayed in college campuses, by international organizations. This is really a time of reckoning for us as a people. And we need to figure out, I need to figure out how to move my notes, and then we will figure out something else. But we need to figure out hold on, sorry. We need to figure out how to fight anti-Semitism by still keeping our values as liberals, by still being able to be allies to causes that we think are important, by making our potential allies understand that we need them too. Part of this also depends on the future of Israel. But before I want to talk about the future of Israel, I want to tell you how Israelis are feeling right now. Obviously, Israelis are feeling incredible pain right now. it really is an ongoing trauma. So the first assault or attack happened on October 7th. During the 2 weeks of the ceasefire, when some of the hostages started to return, it was supposed to feel like some kind of redemption, but what it really felt was like a second attack, because you hear the stories and you live it again and again and again. And the third attack was the response or the lack of response by our allies, by international organizations, by all of the people that we have thought that we stood by, and we have thought that they would stand by us. The Israelis are feeling incredible anger. First of all, at Hamas, definitely. But also, at our allies, I said that. International organizations, I said that. But incredible anger at the government, unbelievable anger at the government, at the military. There is a huge problem of trust. Who can we trust? What is the right strategy right now? The right strategy is to close ranks, or is it to challenge and call out what we think is wrong and problematic and dangerous? There is strong solidarity in tension with deep disagreements. So ever since October 7th, things have changed. Things have really changed. And when you introduced me before, I'm hearing those things and I'm like, who's this person? I don't even remember who this person is. Up until October 6th, I was talking everywhere about the judicial reform that is going on. And I was honestly, quite frankly, I was very worried that Israel is on the verge of a civil war. And then October 7th happened, and you see, right-wing people and left-wing people and religious and secular and Jews and non-Jews, everyone are fighting right now together in Gaza. Almost everyone, because the ultra-Orthodox are not fighting right now in Gaza. That's important to say. And one of the most incredible phenomena of this war is, in a sense, it's almost a continuation of the days before, but one of the most incredible things in this war is that people are going out in the streets in escorting either the hostages that are returning or escorting the fallen soldiers in their last days. So you would see in every single city, if there's a fallen soldiers, you'll have the messages. Everyone are leaving their houses, standing with the flags of Israel, escorting this and this in his last way. Or when the hostages' families will go and, go to a delegation, or go to the UN, people will just form, will just form all throughout their ways, all throughout the streets, just an entourage even outside in the streets. And when the hostages were returning, their stops along the way were cities that are considered very strong, right-wing Likud centers. The hostages are from the kibbutzim, usually more secular, more Ashkenazi. But you would see in the streets of Ofakim, everyone would be outside in the streets crying from happiness about those people returning home. So the solidarity is almost unprecedented in Israeli society. And at the same time, disagreements have not gone anywhere. The disagreements are still there. The political rifts are still there, the religious rifts are still there, the ethnic rifts and the ideological rifts are still there, and they're slowly returning. They're slowly returning. I don't know if you've heard that last week the Supreme Court decided on the case of the judicial, of one segment of the judicial reform. You can't compare to what would have happened if this was the decision before October 7th, but still you see more and more rifts, and the biggest question is, okay, what's the limit of supporting the government in order to perform unity, in order to show unity, and in order not to interrupt the joint war efforts. So what is the future of coexistence? What is the future of peace in Israel? First of all, it's very important to note that my government, this current government, and Netanyahu for years now has strengthened Hamas intentionally in order not to cooperate with the Palestinian Authority, in order not to even try to initiate some process of peace, and that's important to note. It is also important to note, however, that the Palestinian Authority have not condemned a single act that was conducted on October 7th. It is very important to note that there is a very strong support for Hamas's actions on October 7th among the Palestinian Authority, among the Palestinians, both in the West Bank and in Gaza. By the way, according to surveys that were done, Palestinian surveys, more in the West Bank than in Gaza, perhaps because in Gaza they feel the results of these actions. And it is very, very important to be open-eyed, even as someone, and you know, you don't know me, so you don't know that, but I'm saying these things as someone who has worked against the occupation and worked for peace for my whole career. I'm saying these things as someone who has supported the protest movement in the past year and has stood, when I was in Israel, has stood in the protests in Tel Aviv and in Yerushalayim. But it is important to be open-eyed. A lot of people in Gaza have participated in the acts of October 7th and in the acts following October 7th. It is important to understand that. I'm not saying that it's irreversible, but I'm saying it's important to note that. And it'll probably be darker before it'll be lighter. I'll tell you where I draw hope from. There are two trends right now inside Israel concerning the relationship with Arab Palestinian Israelis, with Arabs who are citizens of Israel, with Palestinians who are citizens of Israel. One trend is a trend of growing extremism, growing racism, and growing fear. Now, this fear is justified. I understand it. Even if, it's not justified against these specific people, you know what? I understand that people are afraid. They have good reasons to be afraid. The second trend is a trend, or I'll tell you one thing about that. I have friends who came back after a few years from Berkeley. They came back to Israel this past summer, and they put their toddler in a daycare, and the daycare had caregivers from East Jerusalem, and some of the parents said, okay, what's going on? We're scared. We shouldn't let them continue treating our kids. And my friend said, we had a conversation. My friend said, they have no proof. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem right. But this is our 2-year-old. What do I do? We're not sure. So this is a real trend going on. The second trend is actually the exact opposite. The second trend is a trend of shared fate, of understanding that we are all Israeli, we're in this together, no one is going anywhere. We need to double down on democracy. There is an unprecedented percentage of Arab Palestinians who are citizens of Israel who feel belonging and partners in Israel. It's 71% from the last survey, which is really unprecedented in Israeli history. And I'll give you one more example for this. You probably know that on October 7th, not only Jews were murdered during the attacks. One of the stories is the story of Hamid Abu Al-Ar and his wife. He lost his wife on October 7th. He was in his car with his wife and his baby son. Even though she was dressed, according to Muslim tradition, she was still shot. And he managed to take his son and run away, and he was hiding in a small shed in the middle of nowhere with his son. He was hiding for hours. He was inside, and at some point he tells that he hears a bunch of terrorists that are coming and are hiding on the other side of the shed. And he hears them speaking, and he hears them saying, there's a group of IDF soldiers that is approaching. We're gonna ambush them and we're gonna kill them. And he says, okay, I'm with my baby. I need to decide what to do right now. In a split second, he grabs his baby, he runs outside, he goes to the IDF soldiers, he warns them, and he saves them, and he saves their lives. Afterwards, when he's interviewed, he's saying, this is not Islam. This is not the way that Islam directs us how to act in this world. And he says something else, and this is just two sentences that I brought here. This is in source number 3. He also says, a change must be made. Everyone who lives in this country must be one unit. Arabs, Jews, we must be one unit. Otherwise, anyone can come in and try to infect us with hate, and we don't have time for those games. We don't have time for this. No one is going anywhere. If there's hope somewhere for me in this regard, it is from our bond with Arab Palestinians, citizens of Israel, who hold two identities, who hold their Israeli identity and can hold their Palestinian identity also. I want to finish with the past. Ever since October 7th, when people are talking about what happened, they're using historical metaphors, right? We've started with saying this is Israel's 9/11. Then someone said Pearl Harbor and the pogrom and the worst day for the Jewish people ever since the Holocaust, right? We've been hearing a lot of historical metaphors. Now, the reason for that is that when we are encountering a horrible event, we're trying to make sense of it through things that we know from different events, from our past, from different frameworks. And notice that everything that we have been hearing, or a lot of what we have been hearing, is about the destruction that we have in our history. But our history is filled not only with destruction, but also with resilience. Ever since October 7th, I've been walking around in my mind with a story that I remember from the Talmud about the sages after the destruction. And the story is in source number 4 here. This is from the Babylonian Talmud, Makot, Masechet Makot. So what happens is that right after the destruction of the second temple, the rabbis are doing, it sounds bad, but they're doing like a destruction tour to figure out what's the status in Jerusalem. So they start their tour in Mount Scopus, where Hebrew U is today. And if you've been there, you know that there's a really good view to Temple Mount from there, so they can see what's going on there. And they're starting it, I'm starting to read the second sentence. When they arrived at Mount Scopus and they see the destruction, they rent their garments. Now, when I read this now, I can't help but compare to the destruction that we're seeing today in the past three months in Otef Aza, in the Gaza envelope. When they arrived at the Temple Mount, they saw a fox that emerged from the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies is the most sacred place. It's the place where the divine resides in our world. No one can enter there in the temple. Only one day a year on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, thank you very much, the high priest can enter the Holy of Holies, and even then we pray that he will leave there safely, because the place is so holy. And they see it not only destroyed, but a fox leaving the Holy of Holies, and they start weeping. But Rabbi Akiva starts laughing. And they ask him, "Why are you weeping?" So he asked them, like a good Jew, "Why are you crying? Why are you crying?" And they're saying, it's the last sentence in the first paragraph, and a place which it is written, "And the non-priest who approaches shall die, and now foxes walk in it, and shall we not weep?" And then he explains why he's laughing. And he recites a prophecy. And it's interesting because, we work in historical metaphors. When they try to give meaning to the destruction in front of them, they walk around with prophecies in their mind, with verses, trying to make sense of this horrible, horrible thing that they see. And the prophecy that he's talking about is an odd one, because he says that God says there, "I will take to me faithful witnesses to attest, Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Yevarchiyahu." Now, these two prophets worked in two different times, one in the first temple and the other in the second temple. So it's kind of a weird combination, and the rabbis are trying to figure out why are both of them in the same verse, and what's the connection between them. And then again, the last sentence, the verse established that the prophecy of Zechariah is dependent on the prophecy of Uriah. Both of these prophecies are linked. What are the prophecies saying? In Uriah it is written, "Therefore, for your sake, Zion shall be plowed as a field." One of the most horrible prophecies of destruction among our prophecies. And in Zechariah it is written, "There shall yet be elderly men and elderly women sitting in the streets of Jerusalem." One of the most beautiful redemption prophecies that we have. And then Rabbi Akiva says, "Until the prophecy of Uriah was fulfilled, I was afraid that the prophecy of Zechariah would not be fulfilled. Now that the prophecy of Uriah was fulfilled, it is evident, I know, that the prophecy of Zechariah is valid." So I can't tell you that I can go on and laugh right now when I see the destruction in Be'eri and in Sderot and in Ofakim and in Kfar Aza. But I can definitely say something, that there shall be elderly men and elderly women sitting in the streets of Kfar Aza and Sderot and Ofakim and Be'eri, because we have been here before. We have been here before. Unfortunately, we will probably be here again. But we can do this because we know how to do this. We have a lot of work to do as a people. We need, first of all, to finish this war, and who knows? In the Haftarah of this Shabbat, we have read Mitzafon tetzeh hara, from the north. The horror will come. Who knows what will happen in the next few days with Hezbollah in the north? We need to rebuild Israel. We really need to rebuild Israel. We need to fight anti-Semitism while still holding on to our values, which is very, very difficult. And we need to do all of this while dealing and processing with the generational trauma that has been ignited full force. But while we have a lot of work to do, I want us to remember two things. The first is that, yes, this is not new, but also it's not the same. It's not the same as 80 years ago. I was in a conversation a few weeks ago with California state legislators and assembly members. It was organized by JCRC, and they asked me to give a background on the war and about Israel and what's going on right now. And at some point, our person at JCRC, and I asked them, how many people do you think will show up? He said, 30 or something like that. It was for their staff members too. It was more than 100 that showed up. And at some point he told them, this is really a traumatic moment for us as a people, but this time we have you. The fact that you are showing up right now for us, the fact that we have access, real access to power is different this time. And it's different also in Israel, because Israel was dealt a heavy blow on October 7th. But on October 8th, Israel started to fight. My sister is a history teacher in Israel. And at some point, they started doing meetings of history teachers from different places to try to figure out how we teach about this moment and how do we teach history in this moment. And after one of those meetings, and they have groups, WhatsApp groups, text groups, and after one of those meetings, one of the teachers sent a message she got from her grandmother. It was really such a great text message that I asked permission to translate it, and I got it. So this is source number 5. This is a text from Nechama to her granddaughter Naama. Nechama is a Holocaust survivor. And she says, Naama, it's very nice and important that you teach history of the Holocaust. If it's easier for you to teach what's happening now through the Holocaust, you can say it is similar in the evilness and hatred, but this is not and will not be a Holocaust, because there's an army here, because there's a state, because there's rebirth, and we have to be thankful for it, and strengthen our youth for their energy, for their actions and contribution for the people of Israel. When I was their age, I was a servant of a Gentile. They are freeing their land. Strengthen their faith, their volunteering, their joy, and strengthen all the history teachers. I'm a Holocaust survivor. I lost my son in the Yom Kippur War, and I'm alive. Am Yisrael Chai. This is not new, but it is not the same. And the second thing that I want us to remember is that we are resilient. And I'll give you just one moment of resilience, and then I'll be done. One of the famous stories of October 7th is the story of Rachel from Ofakim. If you've heard about her, she also met with President Biden at some point. Rachel is an elderly woman. She and her husband was held hostage in their house for hours throughout the whole day by 5 terrorists. They were holding them with hand grenades and a lot of weapons. And she knew, though, that right outside of her house, the police is waiting. And among the police is also her son, who's chief in the police. So she knew she has to stall. So the way for her to stall is like every Jewish parent, by offering food. So she said, she tells how she said to the terrorist, "Oh, you're looking pale. Did you eat something today? Have you drank something today?" And she brings out coffee, and she brings out cookies, and at some point her cookies, and they get rescued, and she becomes a symbol. She becomes a symbol. If you look at the two pictures that I posted there, the left one is a graffiti in Tel Aviv showing Rachel as, what's her name? Like the Yes We Can? Rosie, on the streets of Tel Aviv, which is really, I think, beautiful. And the second, in the right picture, these are cookies prepared according to the recipe that Rachel provided to the terrorists, and you don't see it here, but it's said on the cookies that are now being sold and produced, so you'd have something to offer. A day after she was released, someone wrote a tweet that became viral. And it went like this. This is number 6. "In the end, we will win. And in 1,000 years, there will be another holiday about how they tried to destroy us and failed. And the minhag, the custom, will be to eat Rachel cookies or something." And this is really something that I think symbolizes everything that we are about. We will be here in 1,000 years. There would be a holiday because we do holidays. The holiday won't be only an Israeli holiday. It will be a Jewish holiday. And in this Jewish holiday, we will eat, celebrating the acts of bravery that we have encountered and the acts of resilience that we have witnessed. And there are so many of these. Thank you so much.
So if you have time for a few questions, I'll open it up to the community.
Thank you so much for that. That was wonderful. Can you hear me okay? The betrayal that you described in academic circles, something I know very personally. I'm We're so many of us, and yet so few who weren't us, right? And in Israel, there's this ongoing mantra of we have to be prepared to do this alone as well, right? That we can't rely on the world to help Israel. And so I look at the surveys. You mentioned the surveys of Palestinians that I think are very hard to, try to think, those of us who want to look for the hope and the optimism. And similarly, as an American, I look at the surveys of 18 to 24-year-olds here, and the perception of, Jews as an oppressive class, whether or not the Holocaust happened, and whether or not Israel should just be handed over to Hamas. And in recent travels, I've seen a lot of us versus them ideology. And that's been very painful because, as somebody who says, I can acknowledge October 7th, and I can still have my heart out for people. That's what it means to be a progressive Jew, to think about what is happening to people in Gaza, but that the voices that are coming from the other side are, everything. I think we were in Mexico City, Jesus is Palestinian, that we saw the government and all these images. Not a single image of anybody on October 7th, not a single comment about the sexual violence against Jews, because if there's an acknowledgement of that, they're suddenly now on the other side. How do we operate as Jews? How does Israel operate in a world moving forward in the future? Navigating this sense that, yes, the optimism that we're together and we will always be together, but we're maybe at a moment in history that we can't do it alone, And we have to chip away at that 18 to 24-year-old demographic that's really consumed by TikTok and everything else in a way that's very hard for us to break.
So thank you. I think you have touched on two crucial points. One is a problem of not just the Jews. We have a problem of a general problem of morality in this country. We are living in a world of binaries where someone can be either only good or only bad, oppressor, oppressed, or oppressor, victim or privileged, powerful, and if you're this, you're inherently moral and you get a free pass on everything, and if you're this, you cannot do anything right, ever. It's no wonder that people were tearing up posters of the hostages, because they demonstrate something that we cannot conceive, because how can the Israelis be also victims? We cannot conceive it. This is not only a problem of Israel and the Jewish people. This is a problem of America. This is the problem of Canada. In one of the law schools in Canada, the student body issued a statement, or one student body issued a statement talking about so-called Canada and so-called America. It's not just Israel that is facing this. We need to figure out how to introduce more nuance to reality and to the way that our young people are thinking about the world. And we need to do this when we have social media that is making everything worse just by its nature. And I'm not even talking about all the money that is being invested by Iran and Russia and China in making, in separating us even more. So this is a problem that not only us face, which is good. This is connected to the second point that you've said. My colleague from Hartman, the president of Hartman, Yehuda Kurtzer, is talking about two approaches, Judeo-optimism and Judeo-pessimism. Judeo-optimism says, which is very much, which represented for a long time the American version of the Jewish experience, says we need to put our faith in liberal values. What will keep us safe as a people is good education for everyone, is that everyone will enjoy from equality, is that when everyone will be better off, we will be better off too. And that's why we had such a good experience in America. Judeo-pessimism, which is very much represented by the approach of Israel, is saying we have no one to count on but ourselves. We are the only ones who can safeguard ourselves. That's why we need a state. That's why we need a military. But none of these approaches work all the way, right? Because Israel still needs the support of its allies, and if we didn't have, the weapons that the US is sending us, and if we didn't have all of the help from day one, and if we didn't have the veto power, the back of the US in the veto power in the UN, Israel wouldn't get so far. And on the other hand, if we didn't take care of ourselves, I was so surprised when I came to America to find out that my friends who have been speaking about American exceptionalism also know exactly who will hide them, also know exactly where the suitcases are in case they have to run away quickly. So even the Judeo-optimism doesn't work all the way. I think that one of our challenges is to try to connect both of them together, and this connects also to point number one. How do we not give up? I don't think we should give up Judeo-optimism. I don't think we should give up Judeo-pessimism. And I think we need to join forces with, it's not supposed to be us that are fighting anti-Semitism, right? Like, it's supposed to be the state. But it won't do that on its own. So we have to work for it too. We have to combine forces. And if for specific, and I know this is a very general and conceptual answer, for specific, I have specific answers about campuses, I have specific answers about organizations, but I think that conceptually, this is the way that we need to go. Figure out that we need both Judeo-optimism and Judeo-pessimism, and really understand that we as a country, and I will say as a culture, have a serious moral challenge ahead of us.
I'd add my succinct is
It could be
who is the leadership and who can we, as I believe we must, unite behind leaders, to provide our protection for Israel and our lives, as well as the ideological differences that were tearing Israel apart and still will. How do we manage, and we're not even there, but who do we support, and how do we prevent the public opinion from ripping leadership of Israel as we know it? Whether we like it or not, it's there. So I want to root for them. And then I go and I see people are saying, put him in jail. And who do we have if we do that? I'm asking questions without being direct because I don't know how to verbalize it.
You're asking my question too, and a lot of people's question too. If there's something that is so clear, is that this leadership is unworthy of its people, unworthy of its amazing people. But if I'm being really honest, it's not just Netanyahu and this government. We have a serious leadership problem in Israel right now. There's an amazing section in a novel by Shai Agnon, his last novel, Shira. It's about a Jewish studies professor, but at some point he's talking about politics. And he's saying something like, I will ruin it, of course, because I don't have the language of Shai Agnon here. But he says something like, wise people know that tomorrow they will be wiser than today, and that they, by definition, they don't know today what they can know in days to come. And that's why they think they're not worthy to be leaders and to be politicians. Stupid people don't have this problem. They just go on and take more and more power, undisturbed by what they don't know. But then at some point, the professor who's talking about it realizes that he now knows this kind of wisdom, and he's going to use it. Even on this parsha that we've read, Shmot, Exodus, this past Shabbat, we see that Moses is really not into leading. He really doesn't want to lead. There's this at least 3 times when he tells God, I'm not the right person, I don't have the voice, they won't believe me, and at some point God really gets upset with him. And then when I talked with my daughter on this, she said, we studied that all of the worthy and great leaders in the Bible didn't want to be leaders at the beginning. And I think maybe we need leaders who don't want to be leaders right now in Israel. We have too many leaders who really want to be leaders. And now after saying all of this, I will say that I think it's a delicate balance between supporting Israel and criticizing the government. And I think it's possible to say, I strongly support Israel's right to exist and defend itself, and I think this government is the worst government Israel ever had and should be gone as soon as possible. That's what I answer usually.
I'm going to just take a little prerogative to ask a question as well, because as we're talking about leadership here in this country, we're about to head into an election season as well. And many American Jews struggle with the way that the American government supports and how it supports Israel, and when to be giving tough love and when to be giving unconditional support. And it's been for a long time a really big debate among ourselves here as American Jews of what we do when we prod our government to be doing one way or another way. And I think we actually have power here to help them understand what our interests are as American Jews when we think about how we're all bound up together in the state of Israel. And so, as an Israeli, as someone who thinks about these questions not as an American Jew, but from an Israeli perspective, how does it land in Israel? How does it feel when the American government says something that feels like tough love or feels like it's pushing in a way that is maybe not completely supportive? And what advice do you have for us as American Jews as we head into this election season for how we can think of the question of how we are pro-Israel, assuming we all are?
So strategies are interesting question, I think, and they're similar in wherever you go to. It doesn't matter. I mean, this now is a question about America, but there are always 2 types of strategies to promote how to promote social change. If you want to change something, there are 2 types of strategies. One type of strategy is working from within the existing framework. It could be religious, political, legal, whatever you want. Changing from within, and it has its limitation, because changing from within will be much more gradual, will be much more small, maybe you won't get the change that you really want to. And then the other change is the radical change, or the revolutionary change that is really saying, okay, this order does not work, we need to change it altogether and replace it with a different one. And it's great ideally, but usually it's not working, and if it's working, it's usually with violence. It's interesting to compare between Biden and Obama, because if you look at the result, the end result, it's basically the same. In the practical support, in the conditions that were given, they're basically the same. And yet, in Israel, Obama is fairly hated, whereas Biden, I mean, everyone wants him. If he's not elected in the US, he could probably win Israeli election with no problem, no problem. Everyone wants Biden as their parent and president at the same time, if possible, in Israel right now. Really amazing. We've been talking about leadership. Biden is the leadership that is the leader that Israel is striving for, is looking for, which is a bit sad. But what's interesting, no, not like for you it's great, for us it's sad, because we won't get him. It's interesting to see how they work. Because Biden, first of all, embraced and said, I got you. I got your back. I'm with you. I'm crying with you. And after that validation, everything sounds different, you know? Everything makes sense. It makes sense that we might not, we might disagree, but people understand that America has different interests. People understand the support for democracy among the people who were the judicial reform supporter actually increased after the speeches made by Biden, which is crazy, right? And Obama, it was different, because Obama was from the beginning criticizing. Even when he said the same things that Biden say, the way that he said them didn't allow Israelis to hear what he was actually saying. So it's true that the circumstances were different, but there is something so powerful in the knowledge, the real knowledge, that, the American leader is with us, is supporting us. We can disagree later about, about this or about that, and we can also be mad, although I can't fathom someone being mad at Biden right now in Israel. It just won't gonna happen. But I think it's interesting to compare between the actual results and how different Israelis see those two people. Even Obama spoke amazingly after October 7th, but he still considered the same thing among the Israeli crowd. I think it's interesting.
I think there may be time for one more question.
So we were talking before about, you brought up the age group, and you're at Berkeley, and we were talking about this a little, but as one of the moms because I have one in college and one in college soon, there is a very big split in how to handle the anti-Semitism from this age group. There's the moms who are like, I gotta protect my kid's not going anywhere that there was anything that happened. It has to be the most positive college experience ever. And then there are the parents who are like, I'm gonna send my kid wherever they get into, and they need to learn how to deal with it. And I think there's gonna be it's a very big divide in terms of how do the parents turn around, how are you talking to your kids if your attitude is, I'm not gonna put my kid at anywhere there's a possible risk, versus, my kid has to go to the best school possible that they can get into and where they can learn, and they need to learn how to think about it, how to express that, how to deal with it. How do they know what to say? How do they know about Israel? And so I'm wondering, especially because you're at Berkeley, what are you hearing? What are you thinking about in terms of how to really bring these kids back into some knowledge?
So I think it's important to highlight two things about campus experience right now. One is, in most places right now, and it could change, but in most places right now, Jewish students are not unsafe physically, right? They are incredibly and unproductively uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable in a way that really interrupts sometimes with socializing and studying and even everyday life. I have students in Stanford who told me that even on the central whatever, there's a name for it, and I don't remember. In campus, there's an ongoing resistance, Palestinian resistance. And they just feel like and you cannot avoid walking through there, they just feel isolated. They feel so incredibly lonely. And that takes me to the second understanding, is that while Jewish students are not safe, they're also singled out. They are singled out because free speech in campus have been limited more and more and more, and we're used to this language of unsafe, because when someone mispronounced your name, you're unsafe, unless you're a Jew, right? So everyone that is, you cannot insult, even without intention, your students, without them feeling unsafe in our current environment, which is negative on its own. But the bigger problem here is that that does not apply to Jewish students and to anti-Semitism. Now, how do we deal with it? One strategy is to say we're not sending our kids there. First of all, I don't think most parents do send their kids and will send their kids, because college is a way to step into society and be be a productive member of society and gain power. We have been struggling for a long time to get inside, and we got inside and we got more and more powerful. It's true that what it means is that we might feel our kids, which is hard because it's our kids, they might feel very uncomfortable in these forming years that were supposed to be beautiful. I have two things to say about that, and I'm sorry if I'm gonna be a bit Israeli about it. I think we can deal with it. It's okay. I mean, I'm thinking about, Israeli, this is gonna sound horrible, I'm so sorry, but I have to say it. But like Israeli 18-year-olds are fighting in Gaza right now. I think that our students can go to campus and feel uncomfortable, and they'll be fine. And the second, and I'm cringing while I'm saying it, I know, but I have to say it anyway. And the second thing that I want to say, and I'm not sure about that, I think it's okay, to shield our kids and to just have them make sure that they have the most powerful experience for them, and to grow as individuals. But at the same time, I think it's okay if they would work for the Jewish people, even though they're young. And right now, on college campuses, that's a good place to work for the Jewish people. And if there's something that I have witnessed about our young people, both here and in Israel, is that they are remarkable. We have been complaining a lot about the young generation, right? They're on their phones all the time, and they're, all of these letters, what are they now? Z, they're Gen Z, they are irresponsible, they are whatever. They are remarkable. And, and it's our responsibility to help them. But I have full faith, and I have been meeting with a lot of students in the past 3 months. I have a lot of faith in them. I'm very optimistic when our future lies in their hands.
Please join me in thanking Dr. Masua Sagiv.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You can hear her on the podcast Perfect Jewish Parents with my dear friend Josh Layden, and the Hartman podcast, and